Welcome, everybody, to a Sunday night edition of the Anaheim Wow, I already started this off rough. It is not nighttime. It is daytime. To a Sunday edition of the Anaheim Calling Podcast. I am joined, it's me, Jake Rudolph, joined by CJ Woodling. How's it going, CJ?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little sleepy from waking up just so early for this game. But I'm here. I'm ready to go. May take a nap afterwards, though.
Get on my level. Woke up an hour earlier to watch Tottenham-Chelsea, and that game sucked. So I guess I really set the stage for this game to be real fun. But actually, you were on the last podcast, and I wasn't. So I should not be saying joining me. I should be saying I'm joining you this time.
That's right. What
Damn.
up? I'm the captain now.
Sure. But we are here to break down both games from the weekend where the Ducks were able to, we're just going to go spoiler. They were able to beat the Islanders 6-5 in a shootout, and they did not have a good performance today. Yes, every single time there's a day game, I do this, and there's been a lot this year, and it keeps messing me up. But they lost to the Rangers today 5-1. So we're going to kind of do a little bit of a different format on this podcast. We're just kind of going to do a quick blitz through the recap and then kind of give some overall thoughts. So going into yesterday's game, the really only big piece of news was Ryan Getzlaf was held out of the game due to having the flu. So the lineup was kind of all over the place because of that. You really took out one of your top leading scorers, and it left kind of the centers in a different interesting spot with the fact that Isac Lundestrom came into the lineup. I'm trying to remember, did he play against the Devils? I don't believe that he did off the top of my head. This week's kind of been a crazy week.
No,
on the show.
Yeah, I think. Or no, you know what? Hold on. Please remain in a holding pattern.
Yeah, real quick, I did want to mention something that you and I actually talked about a bit in our Slack chat, and I wanted to correct something we had said a week or two ago when talking about Isac Lundestrom. I believe Brian in Rochester had mentioned the fact of the slide rule, and I actually agreed with that. After kind of looking into the way the rules are set up, Isac Lundestrom cannot have the slide rule this year. It's basically only applies to your first year of your entry-level contract. So the fact that his first year has already been counted for because they weren't able to get the slide rule last year because he played over 10 games. This year, no matter what, does not count for the slide rule for him. So this year counts as a year under contract, regardless of if he's in the AHL or NHL. What'd you find, CJ?
Lundestrom made his not his season debut, but he played in New Jersey, but not in Philly.
Okay, so he was.
So this was his third game.
Correct. So he stayed in the lineup tonight, or not yesterday.
This is gonna be a thing.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, it always is
I'm
a
here
thing.
for it.
It always is a thing. He was still in the lineup yesterday, and it was a interesting lineup to say the least, and it was an interesting game also that was all over the place. So let's just start going through the goals. In the first period, you had Anders Lee score a minute 50 into the game with a one-timer from the right wing. I don't really know if there's a whole lot that John Gibson can do on that play. But this kind of set up how the game was going to go, that there were going to be a lot of chances for both sides. And then the Ducks would get a power play late on in the first period with about 4 minutes left. Max Comtois would end up tipping in what was a wonderful, I don't know if it was a shot pass, but let's say it's a shot pass by Isac Lundestrom. Lundestrom winds up for kind of a slap shot from the point on the power play, and it's going a bit wide, and Comtois it basically hits his stick right away and goes in, and it almost, I don't know, do you think it was on purpose?
I'm sure. Wait, yes. Let's do that to make our team look way better.
Yeah. So
regardless, it worked, so
yes,
it doesn't
it
really
did.
matter.
Just going with it, but still, Isac Lundestrom ends up setting up Max Comtois for the goal, which was Max Comtois' third goal of the season. Regardless of whether it was on purpose or not, it's a really great play by both of them, especially Comtois to get a stick on the puck and be able to find the back of the net. And then only about 30 seconds later, the Ducks actually were on the penalty kill at that point in time. Cam Fowler took a tripping call, and Sam Carrick is able to get in on a shorthanded rush and is able to fool. It's a 2-on-1 rush and fool Semyon Varlamov a little bit on the play. Varlamov plays it as if he's going to make the 2-on-1 pass to Carter Rowney, and instead, Sam Carrick does a nice little toe drag, shoots it between the legs of the Islanders defender, and ends up finding the back of the net. And then on that same power play, Brock Nelson is able to find the back of the net. And we're at 2-2 at the end of the first period. And this game was a crazy one. And you kind of sat there thinking, this is not what I expected from this game. The Islanders are known to kind of be this defensive stalwart, that they limit chances, limit goals. And their issue is they don't really generate that many chances. That wasn't really the case at this point in this game.
Well, they actually, I mean, if you actually look at their numbers on the season, the Islanders are actually one of the worst teams in the NHL at giving up shot attempts. So, like last year, it was different where the Islanders were such a defensive stalwart. This season, not as much, and they've been floated by incredible goaltending between Varlamov and Greiss. So, you could kind of see this coming and the dam breaking, and the Ducks have actually now twice this season broken through on their hot goaltending.
Yeah, exactly. And then early on in the second period, you would have actually 5 minutes into the second period, Del Zotto ends up with the puck and ends up, I believe it was taking a shot, and Adam Henrique, this is the one I'm spacing on slightly, gets a tip on that and ends up finding the back of the net to make it 3-2 for the Ducks. And then Matt Barzal does Matt Barzal things about 4 minutes later to make it 3-3. Nick Leddy ends up stepping into a shot and ends up finding the back of the net to make it 4-3. Jakob Silfverberg then also scores to make it 4-4 with about 5 minutes left in the first period. So, it's...
You mean second period.
Yep, second period. The fact that these games are so early, it's messing with my brain a bit.
East Coast elitist, man, messing with our brains.
Exactly, but the game was 4-4 at this point in time. I don't know who had a bet on this game being 4-4 at the even at the final for the final score, but probably wasn't very likely.
Anybody who's raising their hands right now needs to put it down, you liar.
Yes, exactly. And then you had Cam Fowler, 10 minutes in to the third period. Ends up having Nick Deslauriers come up on the rush and leaves him a little drop pass. And Cam Fowler just ends up finding the back of the net with a beautiful shot for his 7th goal of the season. I feel like that's a very sneaky 7th goal of the season for him.
Yeah. I mentioned yesterday where I was talking about how do you think it's possible for a 27-year-old defenseman in his 9th season in the league? Is it possible to consider him to potentially have a breakout? Because Fowler now is on pace for 16 goals on the season and well over 40 points. I mean, he's having a wonderful season. Yeah. And the best part of it is that if you look at all of his underlying shot metrics, they back it up. It's not like he's on some kind of hot streak. He's actually playing extremely well. And I think he's playing at the level that, Ducks fans and Bob Murray expected him to when they took him back in the 2009 draft.
Yeah. And then about 3 minutes later, Ducks take a penalty. Ryan Pulock is able to find the back of the net pretty early on in that penalty. Real quick, I do want to mention this before we get into the shootout. What do you think about John Gibson in this game?
Not great.
Yeah.
He left some questionable rebounds out. What was it? There was that poke check play on the Barzal situation. Like, I get Barzal coming at you, and he's got to be one of the fastest players in the NHL and can stick handle at high speeds. That's got to be terrifying for a goaltender. But I also feel like panicking and poke checking probably isn't the best move in that situation. So he made a couple of outstanding saves. It's not like he completely fell apart, but he certainly was not the greatest.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't his best performance ever. I think the 2.07 expected goals against in all situations is a bit misleading because I think there were some genuinely good chances. For instance, I'm just trying to find it real quick, but I believe the Matt Barzal goal, if I'm looking at this correctly, only had a 19.9% chance of scoring, and it's him kind of in all alone. So I almost would view that as being a bit incorrect. So I feel like the 2.07 is a bit low, but I mean, you allow 5 goals in the game. You can't really look at the goalie and say he had a good game. So,
Yeah.
not exactly the best from John Gibson, but coming into this overtime, nothing really of importance happened. Nobody scored. There weren't amazing chances. Each team got a couple, but the Ducks were able to kind of survive a little bit and get into the shootout. And the Islanders go first. And the first 3 shooters in Eberle, Kasha, and Barzal all would not score, with Andre Kasha going for his patented, I guess at this point we could say, forehand little shimmy, going to the backhand, trying to bring it up top shelf. Not being able to elevate it and get it over the pad of Semyon Varlamov. And then Max Comtois comes in and is able to score. Josh Bailey's able to come in and score, and it leaves Jakob Silfverberg as the final shooter. And he pulls the same exact move that he pulled against the Rangers about a week ago now, where he kind of comes in, and I want to get your thoughts on this shot, but comes in kind of looking like he's going to take that same shot going glove high, coming in on the left side as a right-handed shot, and ends up kind of in the same trajectory, and then it's almost as if he pivots to the backhand, and the goalie just has the goalie tries to read it as if he's going to take that shot, and is out at the top of the crease and is super, super far out, where you make any pivot with the puck moving it from one side to the other, and you're going to have a lot of space, and that's what happened for him.
Exactly. You can tell that they're still kind of expecting him to go glove high. Jakob Silfverberg, for many years, made his living off of just this awesome, extremely quick release snapshot that would, again, go glove high. He's looking to either go between the leg and the glove, or the glove and the bar. And realistically, for a lot of years, the ways that goalies ended up having only to defend it was just by putting their glove up and hoping that they got it in the right place. Eventually, they realized that he wasn't deviating from that, and so goalies started challenging him, cutting him out, coming out a lot further, and essentially completely taking away the angle. Well, it's good, and we saw this last season too, where Silfverberg was just not good in the shootout. He kept trying to move, nothing was working. So it's really good that Silfverberg has now found a fairly creative way to make it look like he's still going with that, and then immediately go with the backhand. We've only got a couple of issues of the sample here, but it's very encouraging, and the league really doesn't necessarily know what he's going to do anymore, which really is going to play in his favor moving forward.
Well, it keeps the goalie honestly, more than anything else, because as you just said, they were starting to play him super far out, and last year we saw that the shot wasn't exactly working anymore. Goalies were saving it more often than not, mainly because they were able to play it so far out, whereas this, if he now has these, all you need is these 2 moves, because they're so different and provide different looks, but they come in at the same exact way and provide misinformation. It allows him to read the situation. If the goalie's playing deep expecting that backhand, he's able to take the shot. If the goalie's playing out far at the top of the crease, he can move it to the backhand, because they cannot react that quickly when they are that far out of the crease.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all about creating the options. Whereas before, Silfverberg didn't really have the options. He just had the one move. Now he's got the options, and it's the lead up to the same way. So he can make a choice depending on either what he feels like, or just to keep that goalie guessing. So that's really going to be the biggest thing for for him getting back to being good at the shootout again.
Yep, exactly. So what were your overall thoughts on this game before we wrap it up and move it into the Rangers game?
I was actually pleasantly surprised by the game. Those of you who follow me know that I am, just from a pure entertainment perspective, I'm a huge fan of the wide open games where defense and goaltending do not matter.
It's fun.
And it's really just a matter of, there's so much fun. At the end of the day, we're watching a sport. We're watching hockey. We're here to be entertained. Yes, I would like the Ducks to be defensively responsible most nights, but every once in a while you get these wide open games from teams that have some good scoring upside on them when they execute. And it's just, honestly, I had a lot of fun, even if it was a train wreck.
Real quick, I do want to say this, that at the end of the day, this is entertainment for all of us. And so for the players and for the coaches and everyone in that state, for them, it's their job. It's not entertainment. It is how they make their money. And at the end of the day, hockey is a results, sports in general are a results-based industry. So for them, they are trying to figure out the safest way to win games. And when you are, it's much safer to not be wide open for you to close it down, lock it down, where you're not exposing yourself and you can maybe get a goal here or there against the run of play. From a fan perspective, this is entertainment. This is what you want. You don't want it to be slow, a slog. You don't want a team to slow down a game to try to win it and win at all costs in that sense. You want a team to be completely open because at the end of the day, this is supposed to be fun. This is supposed to be entertainment. So we can talk about all we want, analyzing things, look at why they're playing specific ways. At the end of the day, this was a fun game. And it was a game where maybe the Ducks didn't get the better of the play. Maybe the Islanders were slightly better, but the Ducks did this without Ryan Getzlaf against a team that is in a decent spot in the Eastern Conference. And, it was fun. I don't think that this is exactly going to be a repeatable scoreline, a repeatable game. If they played this game 5 more times, I think the likelihood of ending at 6-5 is very low. But I think you just got to enjoy it. I do want to talk briefly, though, before we get into the Rangers game. There was a little bit of chatter, I think, on Twitter yesterday about tanking. I don't know if you saw this.
I'd say over the last week or so, the tank talk has really picked up.
And it's interesting because I think it's time to have the conversation again. Because we definitely...
Yeah, we're approaching Christmas, right? We're approaching that time where it's like, yeah...
And we talked about it last year a fair amount. And the fact that I was seeing there were a fair amount of people that were very anti-tanking, very much against the idea of doing it, very much against saying fans should not be rooting against their team to win. And so here's kind of what I want to add to this conversation and what I think is necessary to talk about here is that I don't think anyone is necessarily rooting for the Ducks to win. I think maybe last year, maybe some of that creeped into my head with Randy Carlyle as the coach just because of personal bias, different things like that. But I don't think I really ever want the Ducks to lose. I'm not rooting against them in these games. But I'm sitting there watching these games, and if they lose, it's not as if it's something that matters to me that I'm able to... I would rather take a look at what happened throughout the game and figure out what happened rather than look at the end result, because the end result to me does not matter. And then the other thing about tanking is that I think we may need to adjust the word that's used, because I think at this point tanking has just such huge meaning behind it and negative meaning behind it. I think more so the way that people need to kind of look at it is fans are trying to understand what's the best path to have success moving forward. And it's not necessarily tanking, because you're not guaranteed to get a guy that hits. But the thing is, if you are lower in the standings, you're going to have a better chance of getting the first overall pick. And you actually made a really good point, CJ, in our Slack chat, I think yesterday, or a couple days ago maybe. But one thing that's not talked enough about is the fact that even if you're the last overall team and you don't win the lottery, you still get the 4th pick. Like, that is something
Basically, the lower you are in the standings, like, again, it is a lottery, so of course you're not guaranteed a lottery pick, but the lower you go in the standings, the higher pick you are guaranteed to get. So if you are the last team in the standings, at worst, you are going to get the 4th overall pick. If you are the 3rd team in the standings, at worst, you're going to get the 6th overall pick, and so on and so forth. And actually, when you're up at that level in like the top 5, 6, even I believe in the top 10, the chances of you winning the 1st overall pick are actually still better than the chances of you getting knocked back 3 spots. So the odds are still in your favor, no matter what, even if you get knocked back 1 or 2 picks. And I think the Ducks got knocked back 1 pick last year because Chicago leapfrogged them in the lottery. So it was really just kind of not a bad situation whatsoever. But and keep in mind as well, one of the reasons why this is also getting a lot of talk as well is because in one of the latest Eric Stevens articles, Bob Murray essentially straight up said that he loathes the idea of a tank. So he did say that, but at the same time, here's something that you all need to know, and I've said this before. 50%, at least 50% of what it comes out of a general manager's mouth is complete and utter horse crap. So who knows if he's actually believing that, if he's just kind of sitting here, who knows? But it did cause a little bit of extra discussion.
And before we go into our first break, I want to mention this. Look at all the teams that have been successful over the last 10, 15 years. Teams that have won a cup, teams that have won President's trophies, teams that have been successful. Every one of them have a quote-unquote superstar player. They all have this great player, whether that's Tampa. I know they didn't win last year, but Tampa last year with how great they were in having Kucherov and having Stamkos, whether it's St. Louis with Tarasenko, whether it's Washington with Ovechkin, all of these teams have great players. There really isn't a win by committee type of team necessarily. Everyone, you have to have that type of superstar player, and it might be that Trevor Zegras becomes that. But at this point in time, the Ducks don't have that player. Ryan Getzlaf, I still think is a great player, but he is not that anymore. He
used to be, but not anymore.
Yes,
yeah.
And that is why the Ducks were so good, was they had that player. So here's the conversation that Ducks fans need to have with themselves. How do you get that player moving forward? How do you end up with that type of player? Because there are three options that you have. You're either going to draft one, you're going to trade for one, or you're going to sign one. I don't foresee the Ducks going out and signing one, because when they won the Cup, it was funny, our good buddy Justin mentioned this in our Slack chat. The Ducks in 2007 didn't tank, but they won the Cup, and they were great. But the thing with that team was they got the superstar players by going out and signing them, and they were able to do that.
Well, signing and trading, too, because Chris Pronger was a huge part of that as well.
But
but overall, it was the big, dramatic move. Either free agency or trade.
And the big thing for that team was getting Scott Niedermayer, which was something that only they could get. There was only one team that Scott Niedermayer wanted to go to, and it was the team with Rob Niedermayer on it. So the Ducks
he took less money than New Jersey to play for Anaheim because of that specific fact, and so they were lucky and they had the upper hand on that.
Yes, and so I don't foresee that there's anyone on this. I don't foresee Taylor Hall coming to the Ducks this offseason. I don't foresee there being one. Maybe they go for a trade. That's an option. But somehow a superstar needs to come in. And I'm a big Trevor Zegras fan, but I'm not sure if he is a superstar level player. I think he's a first-line center. I don't know if he's a superstar. And so that is what you Ducks fans need to kind of consider with this, and where people that are pro tanking, pro getting as many draft picks as possible, pro trading away expiring assets like a Derek Grant to get something in return, is you're trying to stockpile to be able to, whether that is you're getting a lot of prospects so that you can then make that trade, because that's how you make trades like that. You're able to have prospects to trade to teams that are wanting to stockpile assets, and you can get their superstar player, or you get a high pick and you're able to draft a superstar player, but somehow you got to get one.
So here's the bottom line. The reason why so many people advocate for tanking, the reason why so many of these teams win and only win if they have at least one superstar on their team that they acquired through some way, is because the NHL, and not just the NHL, realistically, it's the entirety of the North American sports landscape with either soft or hard caps and a draft, is that the system is set up this way. It is designed so that the worst teams get the highest upside players to build around to be able to get back into contention. It is designed around a way for that you can't just sit here, and if you don't necessarily have these amazing players, that you don't have to make all these big moves or tank or whatever it is to go out and to try and win a championship. The system is designed this way, and where the Ducks are right now, this is exactly how the sport in its current form has been set up.
Yep.
So realistically, you either accept that or you don't. And honestly, you're going to kind of be living in denial at that point, because time and time again, almost every single time, this is how you win. This is how you become a successful sports franchise. This is how you win a championship. And if you can't accept that, then you might want to kind of like either look in yourself or maybe look towards another sport.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, having had that conversation, it is time for our first break. So we will be right back. And we are back. So, having gone through that, talked about the Islanders game, any last thoughts? I'm just kind of looking at some of the numbers None of the forward lines really outside of Deslauriers, Carrick, Rowney were really that great on the night. There's also the note that Rickard Rakell left the game at some point in time and did come back in the game, but he did leave the bench for a little bit there, and that will be something of note going into the next game. But any other notes or any other things you want to talk about the Islanders game?
Not on that game. Let's go to yeah. Do we want to get into we have to, but I don't know if we actually want to talk about this game.
Yeah, we have to. So
yeah.
The news that came out this morning was that on top of Ryan Getzlaf still having the flu, Rickard Rakell also still ailing from the upper body injury, and you also had the fact that Jakob Silfverberg had the flu also. So, and it also came out yesterday that Daniel Sprong was called up by the Ducks. So I'm actually very happy with that decision because Daniel Sprong is a guy that I have really advocated for. Felix and I have talked about a bit that he has just shot the puck an insane amount. And he's a guy where, yes, he may have his issues in his own zone. But that's something that either you need to have him work on, which supposedly from the quotes that we've seen and everything from Kevin Dineen that he has. But the other way that you do it is you kind of put him in a position to succeed. Put him on a line with guys that are defensively responsible and allow him to just worry about creating offense. Because at the end of the day, creating offense is not easy. Scoring goals, not easy, especially for this Ducks team. So getting a guy who scored 14 goals in 57 games last season on the roster is not a bad thing to do. But the other thing of note is that because of all the injuries and sickness and everything like that, Korbinian Holzer had to skate as a forward to start this game. And for anyone out there wondering why they didn't call up anyone else because they called up Daniel Sprong and that different type of stuff, it's basically happened because they don't want to put anyone on injured reserve. If you look at the roster, it's completely full without having Getzlaf, Silfverberg, or Rakell on injured reserve. So they basically could not call someone up unless they wanted to do that. And by doing that, I believe that they would not be able to play on Friday's game. So I think that they think it's going to be a short-term issue. They also probably looked at the fact that they were playing the Rangers, who, as I took a look at before the game, their underlying numbers are not good. They're the worst in the league. They allow the most shot attempts against. They allow the most expected goals against. So if you're going to hedge your bets and put Korbinian Holzer on the wing, the Rangers appeared to be like the perfect team to do that for.
And how naive we really are.
Yeah. So let's just jump into this game. So the game didn't start out that great with Philip Hedl scoring 7:14 into the game to make it 1-0, and then Brett Howden followed up with a shot from the wing from Tony DeAngelo, and Ryan Miller leaves actually a pretty bad rebound on this goal. That was the biggest thing. Yes, no one was able to get there to clear it, but this is a shot from the wing that he ends up spitting right back into the middle of the ice, and Brett Howden is able to find it and put it in the back of the net to make it 2-0. Sam Steele is able to find a nice goal a little bit later off an Andre Kasha shot that I believe he finds the rebound on and is able to bury it to make it 2-1. And then Chris Kreider gets in on a breakaway and ends up beating an unassisted breakaway and ends up beating Ryan Miller to make it 3-1 at the end of the first period. So what were your thoughts at the end of this period?
Not good. I think they initially came out of the game looking pretty decent.
Yeah.
They had a few shot attempts. It looked like that they weren't going to be sitting on their heels for the entirety of the first period, and that they actually surprisingly had some good chances. However, obviously that kind of quickly became not the case. The Rangers just took so much possession. They were using their speed. The Ducks aren't really a slow team anymore, but I definitely wouldn't consider them one of the speediest teams in the NHL. The Rangers are, and they're very skilled. They're the type of team that's doing a rebuild right, and I think we really saw that, at least from an offensive standpoint, in the first period from them.
Yeah, and I mean, shot totals at the end of the first period at 5-on-5 were 21 shot attempts 11 shot attempts for, 21 against. You had 7 scoring chances, 4 for the Ducks, 13 against, 4 high danger, 5 against. So the Ducks were really kind of on the back foot a little bit there, and to allow 22 shot attempts or 21 shot attempts against and only get 11 for is kind of embarrassing, to be honest. for this Ducks team. I mean, it was 5 shots on goal for 16 against. And the rest of the game wasn't as bad, but it still wasn't fantastic at 5-on-5. And like I said, this is not a good Rangers team. I mean, the Ducks, granted, were missing their 3 leading scorers, so I think that's all something that needs to be part of this conversation, where someone can definitely look at this game and kind of throw it away with the fact of, well, they're missing their 3 leading scorers, which is something that I would probably be inclined to say. But the issue with doing that is that this is a bad Rangers team. This is a Rangers team that the Ducks, even with missing their 3 leading scorers, should be able to handle and should be able to kind of create chances and create shots for. Just create shots, because they weren't able to tonight. Damn it. There it was again. Just went with tonight. Yeah. Chris Kreider.
Yeah, I'm looking. So I'm looking at some of the numbers at 5-on-5. If you score in venue, it's funny, if you score in venue adjust this, the Rangers actually come out looking better than if you don't score in venue adjust it.
Oh yeah.
The Rangers all game at 5-on-5 gave up a grand total of 30 shot attempts. That's not good at all.
No, that's how many shots on goal you should have.
Yep.
Like that is really, really, really bad against a Rangers team that has allowed a lot more per 60 minutes of ice time. So not great on that front. And going into the second period, with about 4 minutes left in the period, Chris Kreider is able to find the back of the net. And there was a little bit of kind of things happening with Eric Goodbranson and Brendan Lemieux, kind of getting tangled up with one another. Eric Goodbranson skates out of the zone. Supposedly, Brendan Lemieux says, "Let's go." Goodbranson drops the glove. Lemieux doesn't. They both end up getting 2 minutes, 2 minutes unsportsmanlike conduct. Eric Goodbranson skates over to the bench with the fact that Lemieux didn't drop the gloves, breaks his stick on the bench, yells at the referee, and so for that, he gets an additional 10-minute misconduct. My opinion, it happens mainly because he broke the stick over the bench. You don't want to show up a ref. The refs have all the power in the situation. And then near the end of the period, there was another little scrum that happened. I think it was at the end of the period, and Brendan Lemieux's in the middle of it again, ends up throwing a punch, I believe at Carter Rowney or an elbow of some sort. Josh Manson looks incensed, tries to get in. The referee luckily ends up holding him back because he had actually ended up already calling a penalty on that. And so that's one of those where good on the ref for holding back Manson a bit there. Manson needs to have his head about him and know that they need to get goals. They're down in this game. Getting your pound of flesh isn't really going to do a whole lot at that point in time. I don't know if you had any additional thoughts on that play.
Yeah, I mean, I'm usually a big critic of the Ducks for losing their cool, going after people. I think the Ducks have done that for many years, and I've never been a fan of it. I've always been all about, hey, pull it together, be the bigger person, and beat them on the scoreboard. This time, I can completely see where the anger was coming from. I'm glad Manson didn't get his extra hacks in or anything like that, but I can completely understand where the Ducks were coming from the anger. From what it looked like, Lemieux was either baiting guys into fighting or accepting fights and confrontation and then just skating away. And I'm not, and Jake, you and I know this, we're not a huge fan of fights. Like, yeah, they're entertaining. Fighting is dying, and honestly, the sport is probably going to be better from it. But at a certain point, there is, your integrity, your honor, and if you're going to go there and bait people into doing that and not drop the gloves when you agree to it, then I'm sorry, there's no place in the game for that. That's just no backbone, and I can understand where the Ducks are coming from.
I can understand the frustration, but I also think you need to have your head about you and try to handle it the correct way. If you're going to get in the fight, get in the fight. But if he decided to be dumb and take an extra penalty, which he did in that play, take a step back, realize, hey, we're about to go on a power play. Let's make him pay on the scoreboard. That's going to hurt him a whole lot more because he knows that he took a penalty. If you jump in and take that call, he's trying to do that. He's trying to goad you into jumping in and throwing the punch and get a penalty. So instead of doing that, he just took the penalty. Make them pay for it. That's how you make him pay, because that's not going to change these guys' games. I mean, shocker. Brad Marchand is still Brad Marchand. His game has not played at all, or changed at all. Brendan Lemieux has played like this his whole career, and that's not going to change. The way that you make him pay is on the scoreboard. That's just my opinion, though.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you do need to make them pay, but at the same time, this is also a Ducks team that has a lot of issues scoring. So I'm totally okay with you getting in his face, maybe giving him a few shoves, like showing him that, look, this isn't okay, and standing up for yourself physically. Don't sucker punch the guy, don't tackle him, do have a little bit of decor. I don't know if decorum's the right word. Handle yourself a little bit better, but certainly let him know that that's not going to be tolerated, and then try and score.
Well, fair.
So if they were like if they were the Caps or something like that, then yeah, I might agree. But there is a certain point where you can't just skate away from that.
See, here's where I'll disagree with you there. The fact that they struggle scoring goals makes it even more important that they don't screw up and pass on a power play because of trying to get your pound of flesh. I mean, for their frustration for all the stuff that they've done wrong in the on the power play this season, they have 6 goals in their last 6 games on the power play, or had it going into that game. So I think if you want to set it up and maybe try to get in a fight with him later, fine, go ahead and do that. But understand, if there was no penalty call, maybe you try to do it then. There was the penalty call. Let the refs. At a certain point, everyone wants the refs to control a game, yet they hate it when they actually do control a game. Like it's this little catch-22 that everyone always says the refs lost control of the game, all this different stuff. But then when the refs do something like this and hold a guy back and don't allow guys to go at it, they're like, oh, he should have let him go. You got to let him do it. And you can't really have it both ways.
Exactly. But my point is that you need to know the line.
Okay.
Like let them know, like, physically and verbally, that that's not okay. But I'm saying don't cross the line over into tackling them, sucker punching them, drawing the other penalty. There are ways to do that without necessarily getting the penalty, as opposed to just skating away. I think that's just my point.
All right. Moving on into the third period. Early on in that period, the Ducks would go on, or they were on that power play, and basically all of our conversation was for nothing, because the Ducks actually allowed a goal against on that. So, in theory, great idea to try to score a goal. In actual practice, not so much. Not great to allow a shorthanded goal when that happens. So, Ducks allowed a shorthanded goal with Mika Zibanejad throwing the puck from a bad angle. Ends up going in the back of the net, probably in a really weird way. And Ryan Miller probably would want that goal back. And I mean, that's really going to do it for this game. This was a game where the Ducks were kind of behind all the time, the entire game. Like we said, they were missing guys, but this is a team that they really should be able to get more shots on goal against. I mean, final shot on goal tallies in all situations were 41 for the Rangers, 20 for the Ducks. So 20 shots on goal is way too little. There's no way that is how many they should be getting in a game, especially against this Rangers team. So having said that, I do want to ask you, what do you think of Daniel Sprong's game?
I thought he was fine. I would say he had a couple moments where he was fairly noticeable. It was really good to see him quarterbacking the power play again. Yeah. I loved Sprong quarterbacking the power play last year, and I'm really glad Aikens threw him up for this game, and I'd like to see that a little bit more. I thought Sprong, let's put it this way, he had a relatively decent game. Yeah. I think very few Ducks players had truly good games, but I would say that he was perfectly acceptable given the situation.
Yeah, I think the best player on the ice for the Ducks this game was Andre Kasha. I don't.
100%.
He had 4 shots on goal, 4 shot attempts, 2 scoring chances, 2 individual high danger chances. Daniel Sprong, just for reference, had 2 shots on goal, 4 individual shot attempts, 1 scoring chance. So he was able to get the puck off. Really, I think the only line that was decent for the Ducks tonight was the 4th line, which, it's funny.
Yeah.
Derek Grant has gone out and Sam Carrick has come in, and that 4th line has been generating good chances, and a lot of them. So maybe Derek Grant isn't as good as everyone makes him out to be, and the other 2 guys are a little bit better in pulling him up. So Deslauriers, I'm actually very surprised at how well he plays at 5-on-5. He's been much better than I expected over this last little stretch. Really, that was...
And not to mention, I think that, like, one of my biggest notes is that I think this is one of the first games where the Ducks have had a fourth line grinder with kind of that grit goon type reputation that Deslauriers has, who can actually really skate. Like, the dude has some wheels. I don't think the Ducks have ever had that. They had JT Brown, who was super fast, but JT Brown wasn't really like a fighter, gritty, type of thing in the same vein that Deslauriers was.
Probably since Tim Jackman. Tim Jackman was kind of in that vein. Tim Jackman had really good underlying numbers, actually. If you go back and look at how he played for the Ducks, those underlying numbers were pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. I'm with you, though. I've been very pleasantly surprised by Deslauriers specifically over the last few games.
And maybe this is a sign that the Ducks should be making Derek Grant a little bit of a trade bait, and then you have Sam Carrick as the center for that fourth line.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like because remember when the Ducks didn't re-sign Matt Bolesky, and it was mostly because the Ducks kind of realized that his great year, his like 20-plus goal season that they had before he was traded, was the result of an astronomical shooting percentage. Well, guess what? Derek Grant has an astronomical shooting percentage right now, and it's not like he has the same stock or the same player as Bolesky is, but if Murray plays his cards right, I have a feeling he may be able to get a halfway decent asset for him at the deadline.
I think you could probably get a third or a fourth round pick, which is relatively good for Derek Grant.
That's realistic.
And
yeah, absolutely.
He's not going to help you in the last 20 games if you're not in the playoff hunt, and he could help a playoff team, and you could get an asset. So maybe they'll look at doing that. So having said that, we are about to jump into our second break, and we will get into some questions after this break. And we are back. So, having said all that, any other thoughts on the Rangers game? I think really the only thing I want to say is Ryan Miller was not good today.
Nope.
I don't think that it's all his fault, just as I don't think all the goals in the Islanders game were all Gibson's fault. But there were a lot of things that he did not do great. The Zibanejad goal at the end was not great. The second goal with the rebound was not great. There's just a whole lot of bad there.
Yeah, and I'm starting to wonder now is this finally the kind of decline of Ryan Miller that's going to lead to him retiring? And I think most of us had expected, no matter how he performed this season, that this might be the last year of Ryan Miller's career and that he'd retire. But so far this year, he's had a couple of good games, and I would certainly say that he's still a decent backup netminder. Like, there are much worse backup netminders than him in this year. But I'm starting to wonder if maybe we're kind of finally starting to see the actual decline of Ryan Miller that's going to make him retire due to performance.
It's possible.
We still have a little ways to go. With backup netminders, the sample size is always going to be inherently a little bit limited, but he is getting a little bit more playtime. He's gotten a couple more starts so far this year than he did last year, mostly due to better, I think, load management of Gibson. But yeah, we'll see moving forward.
Yep. All right. So, having said all that, time for some questions. So, for those of you watching the recorded version of this at YouTube, you can find us at youtube.com or search us. Search for us by searching for the AC Pod on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to the videos. If you comment there, I will kind of scroll through them as we go and try to respond if I can or bring it up on the show if I can. And if you want to find us, or if you're listening on a recorded version, whether that's on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, actually, I've been using Spotify of late to listen to podcasts. It's been really nice. I had not used that much until now, but we are there. So if you want to be like me and use Spotify for your podcast, you can listen to us there. But the real fun part of the show is the Twitch stream. We stream this show each and every post-game show at twitch.tv/acpod, and you can interact with the show by being in the Twitch chat. And you can help support the show by having Twitch. If you have Amazon Prime, you have one free Twitch Prime sub each and every 30 days. You do have to hit that subscribe button after 30 days, and it really does help out the show. So let's get into some questions. So CJ, what is your favorite non-Simpsons family Simpsons character?
So I'm going to be real here. I am... my printer is going off. I apologize, people. So I am going to admit that I am actually not a massive Simpsons fan. I've watched Simpsons in the past, but I haven't paid a whole lot of attention. That said, for the episodes that I have watched, the movie, things like that, I am a big fan of Ralph Wiggum, just because he's so damn weird. I love him.
Yeah. I'm now trying to think. I guess Millhouse? Is that... I mean, that's kind of a very... It's a very safe answer, but, I mean, let's go with it. Oh.
So...
Absolutely.
Yeah, so let's go with Millhouse there. So here we go. Let's go into this question from the Hardcore Luchador. How can we get a generational type talent going forward? Kind of discussed earlier, though. And who would you want? So what do you think is the best way to get a generational type talent for this Ducks team?
The draft, winning the draft lottery, like that's the best chances that you're going to get a generational talent, and some of that does depend on the strength of the draft class year by year. You know, the Hischier and Nolan Patrick draft really wasn't a superstar draft. I think Hischier is a very good player, but I'm not sure, you know, he's going to be that type of generational superstar type player. Now here's the other thing. I think the word generational is thrown around way too liberally. To me, generational are these once in like a decade type players. So Connor McDavid, generational. Sidney Crosby, generational. Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux. You can make the case for a couple of other guys, but you know, calling people, you know, I've heard some people try to say like, you know, Elias Pettersson is generational. I'm not saying he can't be, but that's not exactly what I would consider to be a truly just transcendent player. So I think it would be a bit easier question to talk about the elite player, the superstar who, or we are talking about that we feel is part of the essential equation to get somebody a cup. So that could be somebody like Elias Pettersson. That would be like Austin Matthews. This year, it's looking like that very well. There's a good chance that maybe Alexis Lafreniere. Mm-hmm. So realistically, the best chances of that happening, in my opinion, are going to be through winning the draft lottery.
Yep, I 100% agree with that. The Hardcore Luchador does add, also saw that Palmieri is being shopped. Do we have any thoughts? My thoughts are, I love Kyle Palmieri. I don't think his age and everything like that and his contract that he would probably be getting soon do not line up with where the Ducks should be looking.
I completely agree with you. I'm a big fan of Palmieri as well, but for a team that's retooling / rebuilding, I don't believe he's the answer.
Yeah. And then, so let's end with this question as we're wrapping up the final show before Christmas. This is not Christmas themed, but, you know, let's go with it. Unless anyone in the Twitch chat want to give us a Christmas question or Hanukkah question, we'll answer it. Lewis asks, who is the best California team right now? Because I don't know if you looked at the standings. No one. All three California teams have 34 points. The Hardcore Luchador chimed in with the San Diego Gulls.
Yeah, to be completely honest, I kind of like Hardcore Luchador's answer. In all seriousness, though, it's as of right now, I think it's impossible to say who's the better team. You look at somebody
I'd say probably the Sharks.
So I would, but at the same time, like on paper, the Sharks are definitely the best California team for sure. In terms of actual play, probably still the Sharks, but not by a lot. The Sharks actually aren't really playing like a playoff team right now. If you look at a lot of it's bad. A lot of their and it's not even just Martin Jones. Like their skaters are just not performing very well. Whereas if you look at somebody like Vegas is obviously a great team, but they are hardcore underperforming their shot metrics and expected goals. And that's starting to be fixed a little bit. They're starting to go on a little bit of a run. The Sharks aren't playing like a playoff team right now. I'd say probably right now the Kings the worst, Ducks second, not by a whole lot. And then the Sharks just barely above them, but nobody is particularly great.
Seeing that minus 30, I may make the argument that the Kings are the best team because their underlying numbers are actually decent.
That's true, actually.
So maybe it might be the Kings.
They're just like the Ducks. They have no finishers.
Well, yeah, but their underlying metrics are better, I think, than the Ducks. But here's the real story from the bottom of the standings. The Detroit Red Wings should just be like given the first overall pick at this point.
Yeah, we also said that about Colorado/Ottawa last season, and look what happened.
No,
So
they
we'll
have a
see.
minus 65 goal difference.
I remember, who was it? I think it was Evolving Wild. Took a look at some of their like goals above replacement metrics for some of the worst seasons of all time, and Detroit right now this season is actually up there with I think what was it, the 2014 Colorado Avalanche and the Buffalo Sabres when they openly tanked for McDavid. Like, that's how bad they are.
Sorry, our good buddy Justin, who's also a Red Wings fan. Sorry that I bring this up a lot, but it's funny to me just so you know, from last year's standing, so over the course of all of last season, the Detroit Red Wings were a minus 53, and Ottawa, who were the worst team in the league, or second worst team with at minus 60, and the Kings were the worst at minus 61 in terms of goal difference. Yeah, the Red Wings have a worse goal difference right now than the Kings did at the end of last season. That's kind of
Yikes.
insane. Because more likely than not, that goal difference is not going to get better for the Red Wings.
No, it's not. They are so bad on so many levels. Now, well, they did just get Jimmy Howard back. It's not like Jimmy Howard is a great goaltender anymore, but they did just activate him. So maybe they arrest that a little bit, but I totally see them putting up a historically bad goal differential.
Yep. So, let's end. We got one question from Hardcore Luchador that said, "What is the worst Christmas gift you've ever gotten?"
That is a really tough one.
That is a tough one because I can't think of one.
Yeah, I think it's mostly because I blank out the bad Christmas gifts, so I don't remember them and wipe them from my memory. It may have
no
been.
toothbrushes?
You know what? I think I think I got this from like a family friend or something like that. It was addressed to me. But
Call them out.
for those of you who aren't aware, so you know how Girl Scouts obviously have cookies. Like, realistically, they're just a cookie sell front right now.
Wait. Girl Scouts sell cookies?
Jake, I'm gonna hang up on you. So the Girl Scouts obviously have the cookies. For those of you who don't know, Boy Scouts tend to sell some of the gourmet popcorn in those like big old tins and everything like that. I really don't like popcorn that much, but like I'll eat it occasionally.
Monster.
But like the Boy Scout popcorn that they sell is super expensive and it tastes like absolute crap. So I would probably say that it's got to be like a family friend or somebody like that years ago who gave me that.
Yeah, I can't think of what my worst Christmas gift is. Part of it may be that I just don't want to call someone out like you just did. That family friend's going to listen to the show. Gonna really feel sad. Called out. So CJ's the bad one here. You all heard it first.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I never called out anybody in particular.
Called them out.
I just said family friend. I have lots of family friends.
So that's gonna do it for. Oh, wait. We've got one more question, and I think you briefly mentioned this, but we'll do it one more time. You did it on the last show. Hardcore Luchador asked us, "Hate to do this to you, but will you guys discuss the future of the show, or can you not?" So I'll briefly mention this, then we'll kind of wrap this thing up. If you want to get a more in-depth thing, listen to what CJ had to say at the top of last show about what's going on. But essentially what's happening is it's a bit unclear. Felix and I should have a bit more clarity within the next week about what's happening with the show. But I do want to say that the podcast is still going to be happening, just where it's going to be, where you can find it, maybe a little bit different. Our Patreon, the Twitch, all of that's still going to be the same. The name may just have to change slightly. We're figuring that out, and that's going to be part of the discussion. So it's just going to be figuring out that different type of stuff. But Felix and I are still planning on doing the podcast. That's not changing. There just might be some slight tweaks to how we do it, when we do it, different things like that. So having said that, if you want to help support this show, you can support us at Patreon. You can find us at patreon.com/acpod, where you can interact in our Discord chat. If you subscribe to the $1 tier, you get access to our Patreon-only Discord chat, where Felix and I are in there during game days, to kind of interact with everyone, talk about the game. It's really just a way to be able to chat, and you can also talk about whatever you want. We have general chat, we have hockey talks, talk about the game, talk about any breaking news, different things like that. And you can also have suggest things for us to talk about in our Patreon exclusive episodes, which you get access to at the $5 tier. We do 2 episodes a month. I believe our next one we are going to be recording next weekend, final weekend of December, and we will be doing a little bit of a look back at the last decade for the Ducks. We will be talking about the rise of Skywalker. Felix needs to still see it. He told me he will this week. I already have seen it.
I need to as well. I haven't seen it yet.
Yes. So you need to see it also. Everyone needs to see it. I'm trying my best not to say a word about it, but Felix and I are planning on talking about it in there. It will be a spoiler cast version of it. We'll do it at the end. So if you have not seen it, do not want to listen to us talk about Star Wars, anything of that you can just skip that part. So that's one way to support us. The other way is, like I said, you can find us at twitch.tv/acpod. You can find us on YouTube by searching for the AC Pod. And the final way you can support us in a way that is completely free to you is by leaving us a review at Apple Podcasts. You can search for us by searching for Anaheim Calling there and leave a rating/review, and we will read it on the show. So I think that's gonna do it for this show. You can find me on Twitter by searching for at Reindeer Games 91. You can find CJ by looking for at CJ Woodley. You can find our writing, at least for the current foreseeable future, at AnaheimCalling.com. You can find also CJ running the Twitter account for the foreseeable future at Anaheim Calling. And I think that's gonna do it. Any final thoughts, CJ?
No, I think that's it for me. Let's all take a nap because I think we all need it after watching this game.
And have a happy holidays to everyone. Happy Hanukkah, happy Christmas, or Merry Christmas, happy any whatever you celebrate. And have a good one. We'll talk to you again on next Friday is the next game. So have a good one, guys.